Hello, hello. This is Postgres FM. My name is Nikolai from Postgres AI, and as usual, my co-host is Michael from PG Mustard. Hi, Michael.
Hello, Nikolai.
And the topic I chose is related to problems, acute problems, unpredictable, which sometimes happen to production systems, including Postgres. In many cases, database is in the center of storm. And let's discuss how we manage this and how to manage it better. So how to handle crisis situation with production Postgres. And I called it Postgres urgent care or emergency room. I don't know what's better name here. But I guess there is something I can share from my past experience. So let's discuss this.
Sounds good. And good point about the database often being in the center of things. I think when you see large, sometimes I guess it is often the large companies that we notice on Twitter and things that post, people start tweeting that it's down. I think recently there was a big GitHub incident, and that was, I think, one of the first communications was about it being database related.
Database changes related, not only database, but also
True.
database changes, which when you have a change with database, it means increased risk of incident in most cases, actually. But it was not about Postgres, so let's exclude this case.
No, and
it's MySQL. But I truly believe that the database, as I usually say, is the heart of any tech system because it's very, very stateful, right? Because it's data. And since it's stateful, it's really hard to scale it and handle performance and so on. So indeed, since database is heart of our systems, production systems, it's often in the center of storm.
Mm-hmm. Where would you like to start with this?
I have a plan. Let's have two-step discussion. First, we'll discuss psychological part of incident management related to databases, and second, purely technical. How about this?
Yeah, I like it. The psychological aspect probably isn't talked about as much as it could be. I think people often in postmortems focus on the technical things that could be done differently to avoid the issue reoccurring. I mean, that obviously is the most important thing, but I feel like so many could also have learned a lot from how they communicated or how much they communicated. Often I see almost no communication from companies that are having big outages, very poor levels of updates. And it wouldn't completely alleviate the situation, of course. If you're down, you're still down. But I'd be surprised if companies that communicate better don't have much better outcomes than the ones that don't. People looking to cancel services afterwards, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So indeed, it may be not well discussed, but I think anyone who is dealing with production at larger scale definitely knows that, first of all, many people manage such kind of stress not well, and it's fine.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not your kind of thing, right? Some people manage stress very well, and it's not me, by the way. I manage stress moderately well. I learn how to do it and so on, but some in the center of production incident, I still find myself at high emotions, we should do something very quickly, right? And it's hard. And also tunnel vision, you see only something and you don't have time for anything else. It's very hard to relax and capture the whole picture and so on. And that's why tooling is also important here, right? Tooling should be designed to for people who are under stress and some runbooks and so on. But this is technical stuff. We will talk about it slightly later. So I think there are some trainings and so on. I'm not good source of pieces of advice here, but I know we should look at people who deal with production systems, SREs and so on, and there are many books written about it, and handbooks, runbooks, and so on. So there are some good practices how to deal with such stress and so on.
What are your favorites of those?
I like to use materials from Google, of course. There is sre.google, this is host name. And
nice.
There are 3 books there and quite good content. I also like handbook from GitLab for production SRE team.
seem to remember Netflix having some good stuff as well, but I
Yeah,
can't.
yeah. Well, we are in the area, like it's not only about databases, of course, right? Like it's SRE area basically, and there are many good materials for this. But specifically for databases, I think in general, if you feel emotional, maybe you should tell this to colleagues, so maybe someone else should be acting more. You need to understand yourself basically, right? If you feel, I sometimes feel myself. I remember we had a Black Friday, very boring because we were very well prepared. We had like a lot of stuff. Like it's large company, e-commerce, and we had very good preparation and war room organized, and we are prepared for incidents. And the whole Black Friday was so boring. So when we finally found some incident at 9 p.m., I was happy. Finally, we have some material. Like, and recently I was helping to some customers, and I remember exactly this state. I'm finally something interesting. This is great state to be in instead of being stressed and everything is on your shoulders. You don't know what to do, or maybe but what if it won't work? You have some good materials to check, like some monitoring systems to check, but so stressed, right? Because you have fears of failure, right? What if you won't be able to bring database back up during many hours, and then like everything is disaster. But if you in the state of like, this is interesting, this is like finally we have some work to do, like in production, I have high level of curiosity. Maybe it's a new case. This comes with experience. You saw many cases, but you are looking for new kind of cases because it's already too boring to deal with the same kind of corruption again, or I don't know, like some database down again. This you saw it many times, and you are hunting for new types of cases, and curiosity helps. So these are very two opposite states, I would say, and I was in both in my life. So yeah.
Does it depend a bit on the severity though? Because for me, even if it was 9 p.m. and I'd been hoping for some interesting case to come up, if it was super serious and the whole, like everything was down, I wouldn't be happy that we finally got an incident.
Honestly, I didn't have cases when, like, for example, life of people depends on this.
Fair.
I can assume this might happen with some systems, but I was in cases when cost of downtime was super high,
Yeah.
and now I'm not scared already. I already I already had it, right? So I know how it feels and so on. I'm not super scared if it's only about money, but life-threatening downtime, honestly, I didn't have it. And I think if it happened, I would be very concerned, right?
Yeah.
Maybe this realization of this is only about money, and the worst thing that can happen, somebody will lose money and you will lose job. It's not the worst case, actually.
Yeah.
Right. Just relax. Right. But life-threatening, it's another story. I'm very curious if someone who listening to us has some system where the state of Postgres can influence health of life of people. This is interesting.
Yeah, you do hear about healthcare use cases, but also military use cases.
Right.
Like,
Right. Yeah, it might happen. Might happen. I didn't have it.
No.
So that's why I'm not super scared. It's like, okay, it's not a big deal. I know it's a big deal. We will be professionally helping, right? But let's just do what we can, and that's it. And that's why curiosity. Is it new case finally? Or okay, like let's work on it. But again, like back to my point, you need to understand yourself. This is very important. If you know you react not well even to small problems, it's better maybe to be assistant.
Yeah. I was doing some thinking before the episode on what kinds of emergencies there could be. And a couple that I don't know if you're 100% thinking of that would be really scary for me would be like security style incidents, either external
Database
actors or
stolen,
internal.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Like
Hackers
held
acting right
ransom,
now.
or
Yeah.
that would be scary in a different way potentially, or exciting in a different way.
This is I think this is CEO level already. So definitely if something like that happens, it's not only Like there is technical aspect here, but it's also very high level organizational aspect of it, how to handle this situation properly, right? So how to
I
communicate.
was still talking about psychologically though.
You know, psychologically, but this like decisions, like how to handle it, it's already CEO level. It happens recently. We received from our insurance, I think we received like regular routine notice that, you know, our database is stolen again. And it just happens. Like, you know, maybe we don't know if your record is also stolen, maybe no. Like, and a couple of days later, I found on GitHub very good project. Some guy created a database of all SSNs of all Americans and just published it on GitHub.
Oh no.
The fact is that it's only 1 billion, like how many digits this number has. So he just published all numbers up to 1 billion.
Oh, okay.
But some people on Twitter started thinking, "Oh, I found my SSN as well." And like, so, like it was like, you know, snowball joke. Some people started, okay, I'm going to remove my SSN, created pull request for it. It's funny. Yeah. So back to this. Like, if you know yourself, it's good. It helps you understand your stress level. On another note, it's funny that we aim to monitor database and production systems well, like with second level precision sometimes, but we don't monitor ourselves, like cortisol level, right? It would be great to understand, like, but we don't have it. This bothers me a lot, like monitoring of human bodies, and I don't understand my own state except how do I feel. So it would be good to see heart rate, for example, right?
Yeah, rings and watches that monitor heart rate, which is probably correlates probably quite well with stress level.
Yeah, but let's maybe slowly shift to technical stuff. So of course, if you know yourself, helps. I wanted to share one story. Very long ago, 15 years ago or so, I had a great team, great startup. I was CTO, I think. Maybe no, I was CEO actually. But yeah, combining two these roles, and I had Postgres production system and great Postgres experts in my team. And I remember one guy was great Postgres expert, and I made a mistake. It was my mistake. I was leaving to a trip for a few days, and I said, you will be responsible for production and especially Postgres state, because he was the best Postgres expert in my team, right? But it was an obvious mistake because incident happened and he couldn't handle it properly, and he was completely like he lost his shit, sorry for French. Right.
So you mean technically he would have been best placed to handle it in the team, but
yeah, technical expert is not necessarily good in terms of incident management, right?
Yeah.
And this is my mistake. I didn't recognize it, and this led to the end of our cooperation, unfortunately. So it's sometimes good technical expert should be assistant, right?
Yes.
Not this is pressure on shoulders, right? This is super important to understand. So my advice is, you like try to understand yourself, and should you be responsible for incident management or just assisting technically, right?
Yeah, know yourself, but also know your team, and know who in your team could be, like who you can call on for different things.
Yeah. Now let's move to technical stuff. What is helpful? Very helpful, first of all, and many small, like our main focus right now is companies who grow, startups, usually lacking database expertise, and many such companies come to us for help, and almost none of them have good incident management in place. It's not only about Postgres, right? And we always suggest thinking about at least simple process, because they say, we had incident last week. My question is, show us incident notes. Is it logged anyhow, like with timestamps? And in most cases, they don't have anything but just words. They have words. Okay, we saw database was slow, then it was unresponsive, blah, blah, blah. What you must have for incident is a sequence, like we must have a document with artifacts, like first known event happened, some logs, screenshots from monitoring, better with links so we can revisit it. But screenshots matter a lot because sometimes monitoring has small retention window, and investigation might be long, especially if you involve external consultants like us, right? So there should be some template and plan for documenting incidents. And when you have it, it also helps with stress because you know what to do. You need to identify first abnormal event, document it, things before it, things after it, like some form it should happen. And everything you notice also documented, important things highlighted. It can be a Google Doc or something with discussion around it. It's good when it's possible to discuss some things so people can ask questions, clarify, add some additional knowledge and so on. It can be anything actually, right? But it's important to be prepared to document it.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of people start with like whatever app you use for chat normally in the team, or some people have like a different app for instance specifically. But if you're using Slack, for example, start a new channel for the instant. All instant related stuff goes in there, screenshots, logs, chat,
that's good.
everything.
That's good.
And then people turn it into a doc later sometimes. But I could see an argument for starting with the doc. Like what? Yeah. But normally people are like panicking at the beginning. So chat makes sense.
Yeah, chat is it's more convenient for many people. It's what you use every day, so chat is good. But it's important to have long-term storage for this document, converted to document. And I can say like most of startups which grew to terabyte or a couple of terabytes in terms of database size, most of them don't have proper incident management workflow developed. They must have it. It's time already. So yeah, I definitely encourage, even if you have like a couple of technical teams technical experts in your team, still it's super important to have incident management workflow developed, right? So yeah, detailed step by step, so we understand what's happening. And you agree on format of this document in advance. You can use some other companies as example. Again, SRE.Google and GitLab handbook for particular this area are useful. GitLab, for example, particularly has example for incident management. Many other companies also shared their templates and description how to document it properly. Super important. And also, of course, sometimes you feel, okay, I'm documenting, but who will be actually solving the problem, right? So it's good if you have a few folks who can help each other, and some of them is responsible for documenting, and other is trying to find quick solution. And also document is important to have because then in bigger companies we have procedure called root cause analysis, RCA, right? To learn from mistakes and fix them and prevent them for future, right? So that's why also important to document. But then this helps, and this is, I think, fundamental number one technical thing you need to do. Oh, it's organizational thing, sorry. But it includes some technical aspects. For example, which monitoring we use when incident happens, right? Where do we start? This dashboard or that dashboard, right? What technical things we must document there? For example, of course, we care about CPU level and disk I/O basics, right? Host SAS. If database seems to be slow or unresponsive, we must document these things. We had discussions about monitoring dashboard number one. We proposed like these things. Dashboard number one in our PGWatch 2 PostgreSQL edition is designed for shallow but very wide analysis, very quick, like up to 1 minute analysis of various components of Postgres and the various properties at very high level, like 30,000 feet level of workload, to understand which directions to investigate further, right?
Yeah, where's the issue?
Yeah, this is very good to prepare in advance. Like I know if incident happens, how I will act, where I will start, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is important. And you will document, you know how to start. This is about monitoring and observability and logs and so on. Mm-hmm. Next, There are several particular cases I can quickly share, which are important to be prepared for. For example, of course, if you already know that database has, for example, a transaction ID wraparound,
like you can see straight away that there's an error in the logs or something.
Yeah. So we have cases very well documented from Sentry, Mailchimp, somebody else, 3, and also we have very, very good work from Google, GCP, Hannu Crossing. He was at Postgres TV presenting his talk about how to handle transaction ID wraparound without single user mode. He thinks single user mode is not the right way to do, but this is traditional approach, single user mode, and very long time for processing of database for recovering the state of database. So this is like you can document if it happens someday, but I haven't seen it for so long because monitoring has it, alerts have it, and so on.
And also recent versions have improvements in this area.
Right,
I remember, I think Peter Gagan did some good work around this, probably others too.
Yeah, I just started from very scary thing. The scariest, this, and also scariest is like loss of backups and you cannot perform disaster recovery, right? Also like very low risk these days.
Yeah, I guess these days sometimes like major issues are things like the whole of US East 1 is down for this doesn't feel like it's happened for a while, but like a cloud regional outage. I feel like that could still take down a company's data. If you're using a managed service or the cloud at all, you're at risk of that. Obviously, you can have plans in place to
even if it's self-managed. Not many people have multi-region setup, and
exactly,
it's very hard actually.
So if you don't have offsite backups, kind of you're sat there thinking, oh, we just have to wait.
Yeah, it's a complex thing to have multi-region purely and well tested, productions like failover tested very well and so on. Yeah, it's a big topic actually. So backups and transaction ID wraparound, the two nightmares of any Postgres DBA, right?
Yeah, are they the scariest to you? Like, I think corruption's pretty scary.
Well, it's a good, interesting topic. Corruption. We had an episode about corruption as well, right? But this is good to put to preparation of incidents. If corruption happens, what we will do? Some steps. And first step is, according to wiki PostgreSQL.org, copy database, right? Because you will try to fix, maybe you will break it more, right? So copy. This is first step to do. And knowing this helps, because this kind of thing you can know in advance. By the way, transaction ID wraparound you can practice as well. There is a recipe I wrote how to simulate it, right? So you can have it in lower environment and then good luck with dealing with it. Or you can clone your database and simulate it there. So corruption is very broad topic, many types of corruption, but some kinds of can be also simulated. There are tools for it. So it's good to know it, right? But in cases I saw, in most cases it was quite like there was some path to escape. In some cases, escape was we just restore from backups losing some data, and for that project it was acceptable. Yeah. In some cases it was okay. We just noticed that only PG statistic is corrupted, so running analyze fixes it. But long term, we see the database is on NFS, and this is no. Don't use NFS for PG data, right? It's quite. Like in most cases I saw corruption, it was something silly actually. But corruption happens also like due to bugs, due to like various stuff. Or mistake planning some major change, like switching to new operational system, glibc. Fortunately, over the last few years, such corruption happened in non-production, so we fully prevented it.
Well, the reason I find it scary is more that we could have been returning bad results. Like it's just
silent corruption.
That's the fear to me. Is more how far back does this go? Anyway, but it's a different kind of emergency.
Yeah, we had corruption due to index and glibc change in production with one company last year, and it was our oversight. But fortunately, it happened only on standby nodes which were not used. So it was pure matter of luck that this production corruption happened.
And no failure.
Yeah. So other clusters used standby nodes. This cluster didn't use it, and we just saw some errors it was during upgrade with logical replication. We saw errors in logs and quickly reacted, and then realized, these standby nodes are not used. Let's pray that failover won't happen soon. Of course, it's like, just imagine, like, so we quickly mitigated this completely. Nobody noticed. But if it happens, the question is how, like, what's the propagation here? But there's also like tooling and knowing, like learning from other people's mistakes helps, of course, as usual. And knowing tools like Amcheck should be very routine tool being used often, right? Amcheck to check B-tree indexes. Hopefully it will finally support other types of indexes soon. I think it's still work in progress, right?
Yeah, I saw some work going on.
Gin and Gist. Yeah. What else? For example, if database is shutting down too slowly, it takes a lot of time, or starting up takes a lot of time. Not once I saw many people being nervous, not understanding that it's normal, not understanding how to check the progress, what to expect. And it was like, when you perform checkpoint tuning, we also had an episode about it, and increase checkpoint timeout and Maxwell size, which you should do on loaded systems. In this case, like restart or just stopping database or starting database might take like many minutes. And if it's self-managed, I saw people kill -9 sick kill, right? Sending to Postgres because they are nervous, not understanding, Postgres is not starting, what to do. And I think now in fresh versions, there are some log messages telling that we are in recovery mode and showing some progress, right? I thought about it.
It's very recent. I think, I can't remember if it did.
It should be so. I mean, it should be so. It should be very straightforward. DBAs should see the progress and have understanding when it will finish. And for older version, at least definitely older than 16, it's unclear. And usually you need to, like, if it's self-managed, you just run PS to see what process reports in its title or top, right? And you see LSN there, then you see, you use PG control data to understand the point of consistency. And then you understand how many, if you have two LSNs and go to another Postgres, you can calculate difference, and difference is in bytes. So you understand how many bytes, megabytes, gigabytes left. And then you can already monitor like every minute and understand, or every second, and understand the progress and have ETA, expected time of arrival, right? Yeah. And this helps. And I think it's a good idea to learn how to do it. In older versions and newer version, I have a how-to about it actually. What if Postgres startup and stop time takes like it's long? What to do about it? And yeah, it should be just learned, right? And if you prepared, it will reduce stress. And yeah, we had a lot of such cases working on DB Lab. Sometimes like clone is not created. Why? But it's because Maxwell size is huge and so on. It's just recovering. So you just need to wait a little bit more. But then we improved it. So yeah, this might happen. This is a very common situation. Long restart time.
Yeah, I'll definitely share that episode in the show notes as well, so people can find it if they weren't listening back then.
What else? Somebody deleted data, and you need
we have other episodes like out of disk. Like there's other kinds of emergencies. One we haven't covered, I don't think, in much detail was the big out of integers. Yeah, integer overflow.
Out of integers, it's a big disaster.
Yeah. But I guess that's quite common. Like in terms of other common issues people come to you with, is that Is that up there, or what tend to be the
I'm biased here because I have feeling it's a very well known problem and people already mitigated or mitigating, not requiring a lot of expertise, right? And our Postgres checkup tool has report for it, like saying how much of capacity of int for regular integer primary key left for particular table. For me, it's like straightforward already, right? And I don't see big deal. But if it happens, of course, it's like at least partial downtime because you cannot insert new rows in this table, and it can be scary.
That's true of so many of these issues, though, right? Like once you're monitoring for them, once you know about them, and you've got alerts far enough out, they become not emergencies.
Right. But I'd like to mention also like common problem, like database is slow or database is unresponsive. What to do about it? Like very general, like where to start. What do you think?
Well, I think that's the monitoring thing, isn't it? Like that's to go to the monitoring, that number one dashboard you talked about.
Yeah.
I think that's the work out where is the problem. It needs to be the first point, doesn't it?
Yeah, I agree. And first thing I would start understanding, I think we can talk about methodologies here, like starting from USE use, right, and others, like there are many of them. But question like USE, usage saturation errors from Brandon Greca, like basics from Netflix, right? It's very, very like trivial approach, I would say. But yeah, here, first question, if database is slow and responsive, first question, do we really put more workload on it? Very simple question, but sometimes hard to answer. Because often we find out that, many more clients connected, some background jobs started like bombing database with new queries, retrying a lot, like connections.
Like cascading effect as well.
Yeah.
Was it the elephants? Or I actually don't know that term, but it's like a.
So question is more load coming from like externally to database, and this can of course be a reason that why it's slow, and if it's tuned not well to handle spikes of load, for example, you keep max connections high, ignoring advice from Postgres experts that let's keep it sane. Recently I saw, I'm sharing without names so I can share, right? 12,000 max connections. This is for me, I think, record. A new client showed it and they explained, and I see like it's a trend. Recently when I say you need to decrease max connections, I also say most likely you will not do it right now because like most people tend to not to do it. Like they all have reasons why max connections should be very high. And of course, since Postgres, I think 14, things are improved in terms of handling idle connections. But when incident happens, these idle connections become active. And we have almost zero chances for statements to be finished, right? Because server is overwhelmed with load, right? But while if you have same number of max connections, I would say take your vCPU's number, multiply it by some relatively low multiplier, like less than 10, right? And this should be max connections for all TP workloads. And then you have page bouncer or something. Yeah, so if you have this and enormous load is coming, additional load will it will be receiving out of connections error and existing
timeouts or something.
Yeah, and we have chances to finish current queries processing and new and so on. So it's much better than you try to please everyone, right? And cannot do it at all, including like with your old clients,
So, it also makes some diagnosis easier, right? If the database is still responding to anything, it's easier to diagnose issues than if it's not responding at all, right?
Exactly.
It's kind of just moving the problem, but it's definitely an improvement.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good point. Like it could just be overwhelmed, but it could be, there are like a million other reasons.
Of course. But first question I would say, like, are we receiving more load?
Okay.
Which already so reason is already outside of Postgres. Well, technically, I just explained additional like factor, high max connections. It's partially problem is inside Postgres, but the main reason, root cause is outside. Like we're just receiving much more than usually, right? This is number one thing to check. If like we don't have time to discuss full recipe for troubleshooting of such cases,
We've got an episode, I think, for that.
maybe, yeah, I already keep forgetting.
It's probably
what
actually
we
just
had.
monitoring. Yeah.
Yeah. But maybe we should have like, like how to troubleshoot slow database step by step. So to save time, second advice, I would say, just check wait event analysis. Second thing, if you have a lot of active sessions, maybe actually sometimes database is slow without a lot of active sessions. It's interesting, but it's also, if you understand number of active sessions, it's very important. But next thing, understand the state of what are they doing, right? So are they doing a lot of IO, or there is a contention related to log manager, for example, or sub-transactions or anything like that. So wait event analysis is super important. And we discuss right now how to improve dashboard number 1, and not dashboard number 3, which is query analysis in pgWatch PostgreSQL edition. And I'm almost convinced to put wait event query analysis to the top. Previously, I was thinking we should have total time from PGSQL statements and average time. Total time maybe should be higher, and we have like long discussion inside the team what should be higher. But now I'm almost convinced actually wait event analysis should be on very top, because it gives you very quick understanding. Just from one chart, you quickly understand number of active sessions and distribution in terms of what they are doing. In an analysis, when you have some number, next step is to segment analysis, right? Properly. So to divide this number to some segments. And I think wait event is very good direction for segmentation, how to say.
Right? Yeah. It's like it splits it into fewer things, so therefore it's easier to spot if there's like a majority. Whereas like with query analysis, you could have a real long tail. Like even the most commonly executed query might only be 1% of your workload. Or it might be 50%, but it might be 1%. Whereas wait event is more likely.
Yeah, and timing in PGSQL statements, it hides details. It might be actual work database is doing, and that's why it's spending time. For example, sequential scans due to lack of indexes or something like that, or content, or it might be waiting for a log to be acquired.
Yeah.
So it also spending time, and you quickly see. So very good book as usual. Books from Brandon Gregg. There is in troubleshooting. I remember also his talks. A 2-part talk about tooling for Linux and so on. And he mentioned that if he needed to choose just one Linux tool, like you can use only one tool and biggest outcome in terms of troubleshooting. What is it? Do you remember? No? It's IOStat. It gives you disk IO, and also it reports CPU as well, segmented by like user system IO weight. So it's super good. Like you see disk IO and CPU just from one tool. Similar here, we see a number of active sessions, and also we see wait events segmentation. It's very good chart to have for troubleshooting.
It feels to me like an interesting trade-off, like whether you're looking at monitoring more often, or not even necessarily more often, but do you optimize for people in an incident, or do you optimize for people doing general performance work? And I think optimizing for the incident people makes some sense, even though it's less often, hopefully.
Yeah, they have less time.
There'll be more, less time, but also heightened emotions and not thinking straightly like we started. So maybe that's it.
Paths should be shorter. Yeah, I agree. Right. Yeah. So there are many other things that can happen with database, of course, right? But if you know some common things, it helps a lot.
Yeah.
And tooling should be prepared, and observability is important.
Yeah. One last question. I think there's some arguments for trying to reduce incidents down to like nearly zero, like trying to put everything in place so that you never have any incidents, high availability, everything to try and minimize the risk. And then I think as a team, you can get out of practice dealing with incidents if you're good at that kind of thing. But then when one does happen, it can really throw you. Some teams like to deal with like super minor incidents and treat those as incidents, almost like as practice. Do you have any opinions or feelings around that kind of thing?
Yeah, good point. So we actually didn't discuss many things. For example, how to categorize incidents as like priority 1, priority 2, and so on. Because when a client comes, it happened like a couple of times over last month. Like a client comes and shows me some graphs with spikes of active sessions exceeding the CPU count significantly. I already say, oh, you are having at least like, P3 incident or maybe P2. Maybe it's not user facing. People haven't noticed it, but it's an incident already. It requires investigation, and they like database is slow, but this is already you need some reaction and mitigation for it. So it requires maybe understanding and expertise and classification rules, which require Postgres understanding, right? Because sometimes I have hard time convincing people that if you have, I don't know, like 64 cores, but active session count jumped to 200, 300, it's already not normal. They say, well, it worked, right?
No one complained.
Yeah. Well, it worked. And part of the problem in Postgres, we don't have good metric for average latency, for example, for query processing, because database job to be like, we want query processing to be not producing errors and be fast. Fast, we have definition of fast for OLTP case. I have an article about it. Definitely it's not 1 second, it should be below. It should be below 100 milliseconds. In most cases, it should be below 10 milliseconds because one HTTP request consists of multiple SQL, usually in many cases. And human perception is 200 milliseconds. So we have some threshold already. So let's keep latency low. But funny thing, Postgres doesn't have latency exposed, average latency. It doesn't. So pgstat database doesn't have it. Nothing has it. Only pgstat statements.
Yeah.
But it's not
precise. It's not in core.
It's not in core. It's not precise. There is max 5,000. In some cases, workload is complex, and there is constant eviction of records from pgstat statements and appearance of new ones. So the latency measured from pgstat statements. This is what most monitoring systems do, including dashboard number 1 we discussed earlier from pgWatch to PostgreSCI edition, but it feels not fully reliable, right? So, but this is important because this is how we can say, okay, really slow. How much? We had sub-millisecond latency, now we have 5 millisecond latency. Okay, indeed, there is proof of it. I like that pgBouncer reports it.
I was going to ask, yeah.
In logs and in stats, it reports it. This is great. This is we should have, honestly, in Postgres as well. But yeah, I actually don't remember discussions about it. There should be some discussions. But so this is our maybe main characteristics of performance. I wish, of course, we had percentiles, not only average.
Yeah.
Many people monitor it from client side. Datadog has APM, and there's ability to monitor it from client side. But this is not purely database latency because it includes RTTs, route trip times, network, right? And it should be excluded if we talk about database to understand behavior of database, right? So yeah, pgstat statements. This is how we understand latency, and yeah, if it's slow, it's slow, and then we need to again apply segmentation and top-down analysis and find what exactly is slow. Everything or just some of it, right?
Yep.
So it's P2, P3 incidents. I think for smaller companies it's hard in terms of database. It's possible, but it's too much work maybe.
Well, but I think there could be an argument from like a make incidents a bit more normal in your team and less stressful, so that when you do have a stressful one, or like when you do have a big one that's a bigger deal,
I see your point.
Yeah.
Unless your team is overwhelmed with P1 incidents, which I also had in my team actually, and I saw it. Like we have every day, we have database down, right?
Oh wow. Okay.
Unless that, it's a good idea if you don't have database incidents to say, okay, let's look for P2, P3 incidents and start processing them routinely, so we build a muscle for incident management. It's a great advice.
Cool.
Indeed. Yeah, maybe that's it. Let's wrap it up.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Nikolai. Catch you next week.
Thank you, Michael.